Good morning, team. Happy Monday. Mr. McCarthy here again with the next installment in our Leadership Insight topic on unconscious bias. So we talked a lot in the last two videos about the benefits of diversity. We talked about, obviously, the impact of discrimination. We talked about a lot about how unconscious bias really creates micro inequities, and they can be very damaging. So, we want to talk a little bit more about today recognizing our own biases, and I'm going to share like some handouts that I'm going to add to the as an attachment to the group, so that you can actually print those out and use them a little bit if you decided to do some work on this as a team, which I think would be a great idea, by the way. So, recognizing your own biases. You need to be really honest with yourself about the stereotypes that affect you. You may consciously believe men and women are equally effective leaders, but as a woman, you may believe that men perhaps don't have the same level of empathy and people skills as women. And again, these are just examples from, the materials that we use to really educate on this on this topic. If that's the case, that unconscious bias can really influence your actions, so that maybe male candidates might be excluded from certain roles or positions. If I asked you to contact my administrative assistant to schedule a meeting with me, what gender do you immediately assume my administrative assistant is? Probably female, right? If you're honest. And again, that's an assumption of a stereotype of somebody that would, sit in that role. And those sorts of things can again, lead to these unconscious biases. And it's particularly important with recruitment. Recruitment is an area where unconscious bias really can come into play. We've seen from research that people will unwittingly, favor applicants with similar backgrounds, maybe from the similar school, maybe from the same state, maybe, who have, a connection with them. And that's caused by an unconscious bias. But you can take practical steps to reduce this, right? So, for example, make sure that when you're writing, let's say you're writing a job description, you want to post, you're trying to recruit people, or you're out there kind of, talking to people and trying to, bring them into the team. You've got to make sure that you're using language that is equally appealing, let's say, to men and women, or to different races and different, different backgrounds. When you read, resumes, maybe from people, read them side by side, rather than one of the mistakes that's very commonly made with resumes is you immediately stereotype the person as soon as you read their name. So as soon as you read their name, you make assumptions. Remember, unconscious biases are important human skills, right? We have them to help us make quick decisions, right? They're not wrong. They are a natural part of how we operate. But as soon as you read the name on a resume, you immediately assume gender, you often assume race, and all sorts of other backgrounds and information about people. And again, that can be, very, very damaging. So neurological tests and exercises can really uncover unconscious biases and reduce their influence, right? And there's this really cool material that's available to us. It's the Implicit Association Test. It's IAT. And it was created by researchers from Harvard, Virginia, and Washington universities. So you can go online, and there's a whole raft of different IATs that you can take. One's on gender, one's on race, one's on whether you have an unconscious bias towards President Donald Trump. There's all sorts of things on there. But not only, again, people, but concepts, race, sexuality, and other types of stereotypes. So I really recommend that if you have a few minutes, take a few of these IATs, and I think you'll find them really interesting and really enlightening. I'll put a link to the IAT on the Facebook group as well. Another useful exercise is to imagine positive contact, right? A great relationship with a certain group of people towards whom you maybe have a conscious bias. So research has shown that simply visualizing a particular situation, with a certain type of people that you're not normally, let's say, comfortable with, has very, very positive effects. It's kind of like, we talk about writing our goals down. If you kind of visualize that relationship, it can be really, really helpful. So I mentioned, I think last time, we can have unconscious biases not only to people but to situations or to things. And one of the examples that I thought is, do you always hold meetings in the same place? Do you always hold events, family get-togethers at the same place? Do you always have meetings in the same way? Those are unconscious biases, and again, they can create micro inequities. So again, we're looking for unconscious biases, not only that we have towards the more obvious things such as gender and race and so on, but again, to situations and things that can cause micro inequities in people and really have a negative effect on the people that that we're interacting with. So one of the things I'm also going to attach on this video is a little handout that's like a self-assessment and a reflection on common micro inequities. So I'm going to read them out, but I'm going to post it, like I said, right? So being as honest in the heart with yourself as you can be. Consider the following. Do you ever automatically dismiss someone's idea only to accept that same idea from somebody else? Do you ever check your watch or your phone while you're talking to somebody but not with other people? Do you ever rely on the same few people in a team to get the job done rather than involving a broader, more diverse group? Do you repeatedly mispronounce somebody's name from maybe from a different culture, knowing that you do that and not making an effort to correct it? Everybody can get that wrong sometimes, but there comes a point at which you have to learn how to pronounce that name properly. Do you routinely greet some people from your team more heartily than others? Do you pay less attention to what a younger or maybe an older person on the team has to say because you have an unconscious bias towards their age in one direction or another? And do you ever assume that someone with a specific accent may be less intelligent? Very, very common unconscious bias. And then when you think about your team, again, have you recognized the effects of micro inequities on your team? And if so, how? What behaviors encourage people to contribute and to be inclusive? You ask yourself, what can I do differently to minimize or eliminate micro inequities that I'm aware of? What can the team do differently? And if you're managing people, what can you do as a leader to differently engage with people, right? To really eliminate those micro inequities. So those are some really interesting questions. And I think, again, if you make it practical and you apply it to the situation that you're in, I think you'll find that it can be quite enlightening. So once again, thanks for listening and watching. And if you could give it a like, I would appreciate that. Please subscribe and share with anyone that you think might enjoy it. And I'll speak to you next time. Bye for now.